Hi there. Welcome to the first Crystal Vision Salon for 2023. I'm really excited about all of the different stones that we're going to be exploring this year. And tonight, we're going to start with quartz with chlorite, also known as Venus-veiled quartz. The other thing that we're going to be exploring just tidbit by tidbit over each month of this year are meteorites. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about the Benben stone of ancient Egypt and just establish a little bit of past history about meteorites, meteorite worship in the ancient world. And every month there'll be like a little tidbit more, and we'll then get into exploring some of the most famous meteorites in the world, when they formed, what their powers and energies are, and how we can connect with them, work with them, what lore is associated with them, different cultural traditions that are associated with them. So it's a year where we're going to be in Crystal Visions working with heaven and earth. And as you know, in the Mount Shasta Goddess Temple, every January we work with quartz, clear quartz, as the stone that we've associated with Prajnaparamita, the mother of the Buddhas. And that's because clear quartz has a refractory quality. It can create rainbow light. And Prajnaparamita is often depicted as the perfection of wisdom, the essence of Dzogchen, which is the clear light awareness that all of us inherently have within. So it's interesting that when we did our crystal pull for January of this year for our annual lithomancy, that this stone, otherwise known as Venus-veiled quartz, came up because it's quartz, but it's anything but clear. It's a quartz that's coated in chlorite. So I've got a couple examples tonight of various different types of chlorite in quartz and chlorite coated quartz, but I thought first I'd talk a little bit about how it gets there, what its metaphysical meanings are, and then we'll look at some examples. So beginning just to examine chlorite and quartz, one of the things that chlorite does within a quartz is that it promotes growth, inner peace, inner harmony. Of course, like every crystal says that it promotes harmony and peace, but that particularly the chlorite in quartz will help us to bring forward new awareness, new layers of wisdom, and particularly new layers of emotional sensitivity to others. And right now Mercury is retrograde, so of course that's a really valuable quality. The way that chlorite forms is that it's actually like almost like a parasitic mineral. It doesn't exactly devour any stone that it attaches itself to, but it does embed itself and start to grow into the matrix of whatever other stone that it embeds itself into. And so chlorite is technically metamorphic, a metamorphic stone, meaning that it is a stone that changes from one form to another, but it can be found within sedimentary, igneous, and metamorphic stones. What it is it's almost like a sandstone, or like a secondary sandy mineral that begins to grow on the surface or inside of another stone. And when it grows on the surface, it sort of grows like a lichen. It creeps and it begins to coat the outside surface of the stone. And frequently when we see chlorite in quartz, what we see is that at a certain point, speckles of chlorite grew on the surface or one of the faces of a quartz point. And then over time, that quartz grew and grew and grew, and it basically sheathed the chlorite inside. So I've got a visual example, beautiful visual example of that. So give me a second and I will share that one. Here we go. So this is a gorgeous example of chlorite in quartz. And what we see is that here's our main initial growth of chlorite over the point of a lump of quartz. And then because of the environment, as the quartz continued to grow, similar to rings of a tree, the chlorite would coat each point. And so what it really represents is a very significant passage of time. We're talking about thousands of years between each of these layers. Now, it will go quicker than thousands of years if it's in a seawater environment, because if there are other minerals, especially the types of minerals that we find in sand, present in seawater, then the seawater hastens the process of the chlorite developing out of that other mineral and bonding to the surface of the stone. But in this case, what we have are like the rings of a tree. The quartz point is this big, and it grows a layer of chlorite on the outside. Then the quartz adds the next layer, it grows again, and a layer of chlorite grows on the outside, and so on. And so you see a stack, and it looks almost like a mountain peak within the stone, which has this beautiful reverberation. And this is known as a phantom. So when we see a phantom inside of a stone, it's believed that this stone can be used for helping us to call our guides from the unseen world, as well as accessing past life records that we carry within. Each of these layers basically represents an entire lifetime of this quartz stone. So if we were working with chlorite in quartz, especially in a phantom form, it would really be a great tool for us to use in meditation, or to keep on an ancestor altar, or to keep on our working altar, that brings in all of the wisdom of our lineages, the past lives that we lived before, or the lives of the beings that partner with us in our work today. And chlorite phantoms in quartz are pretty common. You do see them, frequently, but it's rare that you see them so symmetrically and so perfectly. This particular specimen came from Brazil, and a lot of the beautiful phantoms that we see like this come from Brazil, simply because the environment there is conducive to it, particularly because there's a lot of areas that have igneous rock. There's a lot of areas that have seabed stone. So when chlorite is within quartz or something like that, like what we see here, it generally forms in a greenish color. So you can see here that even though this is kind of a gray green, it does have a distinctively greenish tint. And typically when we see chlorite in quartz, we're usually going to see some kind of greenish color. However, it also comes in shades that are yellow, brown, red, black, and gray. A lot of chlorite is found in, sandy or clay-rich soil. It's found along with quartz, it's found in garnet. It's also found in actinolite and epidote. So interestingly, when you see something like a piece of prehnite, which was one of our stones from last year, often that bubbly formation of prehnite has within it shards of epidote, and the epidote has within it chlorite. So you can sort of see that there's a lot of layers that can go into the product, how the earth has produced a particular look of a mineral. Basically, chlorite in quartz is one of the most mild forms of metamorphism. So metamorphism in stones is when the stone actively turns from one thing into another thing as a result of heat and pressure, as a result of other stones around it creating growth and interference within the crystal. So quartz with chlorite in it is like one of the mildest cases of that. And then we also see other cases that are more extreme, where like one stone turns entirely into another stone. For example, it's a metamorphic process for us to see trees that then turn into petrified wood, and ultimately that becomes like a rock, it looks like an agate, but it isn't. When the temperature gets too high, the layers of chlorite can be dissolved or entirely, or replaced with something else, such as mica muscovite, which was one of our stones last year as well, or quartz. So in this, what we basically see is a quartz was formed, a layer of chlorite grew on it, would have kept growing, but under intense heat, the next layer of quartz formed, the layer of chlorite grew on the surface of it, under intense heat, the next quartz formed, etc. We also find that chlorite will attach itself to stones like garnet, and when it does, it embeds itself in the garnet, and that is what produces different colors of garnet. So for example, almandine garnet is a classic red garnet. Grossularite are the pink, yellow, and green garnets. And then you also see black garnet. And when you see black garnet, that means that chlorite grew into the stone and covered all of the stone to the point where the garnet, whatever color it originally was, is completely coated in the black of the chlorite, usually red, and that's what makes it black. So there's a whole lot of different uses for chlorite. When we, see it in like a sandy form, it might be used in some kind of sandy grit. It can be used as something inside of a tumbling machine to help tumble other crystals. It is a common mineral that's found in clay, and it will actually strengthen the clay and make the clay more durable, and sometimes like a little bit rough and bumpy. So what happens when there's not another layer of quartz that forms over the top of the chlorite? Well, we don't have phantoms. In this case, what we have is something more like this, which is what we're working with today, Venus veil quartz. So the piece that I held up before is entirely covered, and pieces from certain regions of the world have more or less covering of chlorite, and in different colors. Like this piece is sort of still in that classic gray-green scale with a little bit of black. The pieces that I have that are from Mongolia are dark, smoky charcoal gray to black. In the Himalayas, you'll also see them often black. And in fact, Himalayan quartz, which has a lot of chlorite inclusions in it, will sometimes look like smoky quartz, not because the quartz itself is smoky, but because there's so many black inclusions of chlorite. So the piece that we're looking at here has that sort of gray-green, but in this you can see where if it had been left in the ground, the chlorite would have eventually overtaken all of these points and covered them entirely. We also have, and I will move this over a little bit. How can I do that? There we go. We also have this example here. This is an example of the yellow chlorite coating quartz. And so this is comparably more rare. We don't see this nearly as often. Here is an example from the Himalayas that has a brownish reddish color chlorite mixed in with the black and the gray-green color. But typically it's a range of colors. More rare, on the more rare side of it is going to be the brown, red, yellow, and on the more common side of it, green, gray, and black. So what does it do? Well, Venus veil quartz. So the reason that this can sometimes be called Venus veil quartz is because quartz with chlorite is a very heart-opening stone, and it's a stone that really helps individuals to access wisdom that lies beyond this realm. So when we work with quartz in chlorite, chlorite quartz, we will often feel like we're gazing into a fairy realm. Like if you're looking at chlorite phantom in quartz, if you're looking at chlorite inclusions in quartz, occasionally they look mossy or kind of like a fairy world inside of the quartz stone. But when it's coated on the outside, what it basically connotes is a deep connection to the inner world, the ability to veil oneself. It can be used as an invisibility stone. It is good for being able to kind of know when to discern, when to speak and when to keep silent. It's a stone that helps us be sensitive to others so that we're not forefronting our own stories, needs, or advice at the expense of someone else sharing their pain or sharing their circumstances. So it can help us be better listeners. Chlorite coating on quartz also helps us to basically drop a veil over our own worldly concerns so that we have greater success in shamanic journeying. So holding a piece of chlorite coated quartz can assist with shamanic journey techniques or with guided meditation techniques, especially when you want to end up in a different inner landscape than the one that you're physically inhabiting. It can also be used for astral travel, astral projection, and it helps you to keep a grounding cord in this world and not lose touch with the physical safety of the body in this world, while still being able to journey beyond this dimension. When you work with chlorite in quartz, especially in that kind of a capacity through meditation, astral travel, or shamanic journeying, you have a perspective change. Your perspective shifts and you see things more holistically, and you're less kind of rooted down in your own opinions about this world, your life, yourself, you start to kind of entertain a more transcendent awareness. And so just like regular quartz is an amplifier. Chlorite in quartz is also an amplifier, but whereas clear quartz helps us to clarify things, set goals, point in the right direction, move move obstacles out of the way. Chlorite coated quartz helps us dig deep, go within, transcend, shutter the gates of conventional reality, and become aware of ourselves and all beings as vast, timeless parts of a vast, timeless, universal awareness. Interestingly, when we work with this, in this way, it will help us to overcome limiting beliefs we have about ourselves. So, for example, if for your whole life you've had a story in your mind about how, well, you didn't do so great at math when you were in the 6th grade, and so now you just don't think of yourself as being good at math. You have always struggled with math since then. You can actually work with chlorite-coated quartz to develop that much more vast perspective of yourself and thereby dispel or dismiss that story. You can actually envision in a meditation that the chlorite is growing over the surface of that story, obscuring it, shifting it, changing it, transforming it, so that you are able to metamorphosize from that sense of limiting self-belief into a much more expansive self-belief. Because chlorite is a metamorphic stone, it's a great stone to have if you want to change a particular habit or a particular way of thinking or a particular way of being. If there's a pattern in your life that you're trying to disrupt, it can be useful for helping to quit smoking, for example, overcome addictions. If you have a limiting belief, it can help you overcome it. If you're going through a time of transition or transformation, and particularly when we go through times of physical transformation, maybe you've just given birth, or maybe you're losing weight, or maybe you're planning to change your physical appearance in some way, you can work with chlorite in a chlorite-coated quartz or Venus-veiled quartz to actually close off a little bit of the public eye to the process so that you can have the sanctuary of yourself as you're going through whatever metamorphosis you're going through, and then emerge after that, working with something that would be a little more of a showy stone, something more like golden apatite or clear quartz or carnelian or tangerine quartz, to bring yourself out and kind of have like a a coming out party of your own. So when you have an imbalance physically, it's believed that chlorite quartz will help support cellular regeneration and will help to reduce cellular mutation. So chlorite quartz is often carried by people who are on a cancer journey. It's carried for comfort by people who might be going through another type of major physical transition in their lives. And it can help protect you from the kind of collapsing or weakening of your cells that can happen with age. Finally, because chlorite coats the outside of the quartz and covers it so thoroughly, it's said to help protect from things like radiation, EMFs, Wi-Fi, other, ambient vibes that you don't want to stick to you. So we've talked in the temple recently, just today in one of our classes, about how you want to make sure if you're doing psychic work in the world that other people's psychic ick doesn't stick to you. Chlorite in quartz can be a very valuable ally for helping with that. So, in terms of your wealth, your prosperity, and your willpower, chlorite is supporting you to stick with your dreams, even if you've encountered obstacles or failures. And it's saying, take it all down, go within, find your inner compass, and recalibrate and start over. So it's a very helpful stone for beginning again, even if you've gone through a difficult time. And I would recommend for anybody, for example, who's restarting portions of their public life after this pandemic period that we've been in, that you might want to work with either chlorite in quartz or chlorite coated quartz to give yourself that opportunity to start over and to have a grand reveal. So that's chlorite coated quartz, otherwise known as Venus veil quartz. Now we're going to just shift to the heavenly aspect of our monthly Crystal Visions salons. And I have this little tidbit to share with you. There's a quote from Carl Sagan. He said this in the year 1980 on the show Cosmos, his show. "The surface of the earth is the shore of the cosmic ocean. On this shore, we've learned most of what we know. Recently, we've waded a little way out, maybe ankle deep, and the water seems inviting. Some part of our being knows this is where we came from. We long to return, and we can, because the cosmos is also within us. We are made of star stuff. We are a way for the cosmos to know itself." So I love this quote for so many reasons. Carl Sagan was not, like a super spiritual guy. In fact, there are other quotes that he's talking very seriously about how in the future, if we're not careful, we won't work to preserve the earth. We'll just clutch our crystals and hope something will change. And I feel like, he had a mystical scientific approach. He understood that hard science was valuable and he made his living on it, but he also understood that the desire to know where we came from and why we're here provokes a mystical response in each of us, and that response can either motivate us to do, to make, to create, to help, or it can drive us into a kind of magical thinking where we are not actually taking much responsibility for our actions, our lives, and our world. And I think his perspective on how we came to be has the elegance of being both entirely scientific and entirely poetic. He knew that everything in the known universe is made of the same cosmic dust, and that cosmic dust is the result of eons of orbits and planets spinning and crashing into each other and breaking apart, and then those little motes of dust gathering together and forming new stuff, new stars, new planets. And so in order for a planet such as Earth to exist, it relied on countless other planets that lived and died before it, that came into being, that collided with each other in space, that dissolved into dust, and that reconstituted into this vast blue and green ball where we now live. Humanity has been obsessed with the stars since the first people crawled up out of the primordial sludge and looked up and saw the glowing dots of space light above us. In ancient Greek, the word meteor describes an object that comes from a high place. Oh, and that reminds me, actually, the name chlorite comes also from an ancient Greek word. It comes from the word, let's find it here, chloros, which means green. The word chloros in ancient Greek means green, and it's the same derivative that we get the word chlorophyll from. That is what turns plants green as the result of photosynthesis. So anyway, back to the meteorites. While in space, a meteor is known as a meteoroid, and once it hits Earth, the meteor is known as a meteorite, because the ite suffix implies something that is on the Earth, whereas the oid suffix means something that's still floating in space. So asteroid, meteoroid, those things are out there, whereas meteorite, but also stones like barite or actinolite or any number of others, means it is embedded in this, it has come to land, or it is growing from within the surface of the Earth. All Earth-side meteorites are known as tektites or impactites. So a tektite or an impactite, it means it literally hit the Earth, fell to the Earth. 1,000 years before the Iron Age in the Old Kingdom of Egypt, we have, far before there's anyone smelting iron in the Iron Age, 1,000 years before anyone has thought to dig up iron out of the ground and smelt it. So before the time of Ogun, we have the ancient Egyptians gathering meteorites that were metallic meteorites and smelting them and making sacred altar tools. So Ogun was even like back there. He's like, I was smelting when it was all just stars, not just when you were digging. So there's this powerful, powerful awareness amongst the ancient Egyptians that the objects that fell from space were the stuff of the cosmic vault. In fact, the ancient Egyptians believed that when a meteorite fell to Earth, it was literally a piece of the body of one of the gods that had fallen to Earth, because they believed that the gods occupied the vault of heaven. And in fact, the original name for Isis was Sopdet, and Sopdet was the name of the star we now call Sirius, which heralded the coming of the Nile. And actually, if you go into a number of different polytheistic world traditions, you will find that the earliest forms of some of the deities that they worshipped were in star form, that they named a star the name of the deity, that they worshipped that star when it was in the heavens, and that the earthly manifestations of that deity came as a result of making an association or connection between the rising or the coming of that star, the appearance of that star in their part of the sky, and earthly phenomena. So metal implements were fashioned in ancient Egypt in the Old Kingdom from meteoric iron, and meteoric iron was believed to be made from the bones of the gods and from the bones of deified pharaohs. Space and stars were said to be the limbs and flesh of the gods. So, like pharaohs, meteors were worshipped in ancient Egypt as deities. One such meteorite is known as the Benben stone. And I'm going to share an image. So this is an image of the Benben stone, which is on display in the Museum of Cairo. It's been engraved with hieroglyphics, but it is a meteor that fell to Earth. And it was found in the tomb of Ra-at-Anu in the place that the Greeks called Heliopolis. It was positioned in such a way in the temple that each day when the sun rose, the first rays of the sun that entered the temple fell on the tip of the stone. And there were probably different significant times of the year, when the sun would be higher in the sky, that it would illuminate in a particular way. The stone was believed to represent the primordial earth, and that's the name of primordial earth in the ancient language was Benben. That's why it's called the Benben stone. It was believed that primordial earth, the first earth, was actually like a teardrop shaped or pyramid-esque shaped object that rose out of the primordial waters of Nu, and that's the chaos of space, and that the creator deity Atum, when first coming to Earth, stepped foot down upon this stone. Now, in just like something I'm gonna like touch on that is absolutely insane and so powerful, is that one of the earliest meteoric impacts that we know of on Earth was the Vredefort meteor, which landed in the area that's now known as South Africa 2 billion years ago. The meteor itself was between 6 and 9 miles wide, and it left a 185-mile crater in the Earth. You can still, to this day, go and see the Vredefort crater. But up until the 1990s, the Vredefort crater was thought to be the remains of a volcano. This is because there's a dome at the center of the Vredefort crater that's layered with igneous stones that are commonly found in volcanic regions like granite. But what really happened is that when the Vredefort meteor hit the spot that it hit, the stone of it, as well as the crust of the earth, liquefied upon impact and then solidified. And that's why it had an igneous composition, because just like lava liquefies and then hardens, the impact of the meteor was so hot and coming in so hot and so fast that when it hit the earth, both the earth and the meteor immediately liquefied and formed a well. And that well then dried and then solidified and seemed like it was the place where there had been a volcano. But in the 1990s, scientists did a little dug a little deeper and found that, in fact, it was an impactite that caused that crater. Now, here's the interesting part. Get ready. It's believed that the central dome that's exposed in the middle of the 2 billion year old Vredefort crater is actually the Cap-Val Craton, which was the original microcontinent of this planet formed 4 million years ago, which technically means that, as in the story of the creator god Atum stepping down upon the first continent of Earth amidst the primordial waters of Nu, that in ancient Egypt, they had a story for it, but that what actually happened is that 2 billion years ago, a meteorite hit down upon the original microcontinent that was in the primordial waters of the earth and created this huge crater, a well of life. And to this day, the area around the Vredefort crater is very fertile, and people farm there. In fact, when they went to go and like dig and explore that area, the people who lived there were like, oh yeah, this was, they knew this was a volcanic, this wasn't a volcano. They said they knew this was an impact of a meteor. But the scientists who came were like, oh, we thought it was a volcano this whole time. But the people knew that this was actually one of the places where fertile life blossomed on the earth as a result of this impact. And today, the Vredefort crater is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Just a little detail, when the Vredefort meteor was traveling toward Earth, it was going 15 miles per second. And it hit the Earth with such an impact that it changed the tilt of the Earth as well as the orbit, the orbital pattern of the Earth. So when we look at the Benben stone and we see, so that it see the ritual around it, the sun touching it as it first arose each day, the welcoming of new life, the legend that this shape, this pyramidal shape, was the primordial continent on Earth upon which the Creator stepped foot in the primordial waters of Nu. And then later we'll see that this shape is repeated in what? The pyramids. And the pyramids and Benben stones are found, there's this one, which is like the very, very important one that's now in the museum, but actually there were more than one Benben stone. Over time, different temples would find different teardrop shaped meteors, and they would carve and shape them to make them a little bit pointier, a little bit more defined. They'd add words to them like they did here, and they installed them in more than one temple. So this gives rise to an entire story of meteoric worship that we then see spreading into Greece, Anatolia, and Rome. And in the coming months, we're going to cover some of that. We're going to talk about the statue of Artemis, whose eyes were made of meteors. We're going to talk about the meteoric form of Aphrodite worshipped in Cyprus. We're going to talk about the needle of Cybele, a very famous meteor that ended up being conscripted out of Anatolia by the Roman army to protect against Hannibal's march and advance on Rome. And we're going to learn about a couple other important meteors that people have worshipped as deities or as the representations of deities over time. So that's our crystal visions for January with Venus veil, chlorite quartz, and the Benben stone. And we will be back next month. I'm really looking forward to our crystal visions for February, when we will be working with red sardonyx. And I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. See you later. Bye.